Today I'm going to talk to you about how one experience can rewire your entire brain and why it is controlling your life. When I was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, we went on a school trip. And on the school trip, we were going to see a production, and the production was of The Little Prince. And I don't remember anything about the play. I couldn't tell you what it was about, but at the end of the play, something very magical happened. The ceiling of the theater opened up and all of this gold foil fell from above. I'm talking like blanketed the entire auditorium. We were covered in it. I was like 6 years old. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is the best thing ever. Without realizing it, especially because there's that window between 0 and 7 when neuroplasticity is really like just absorbing everything. In my mind, I was like, this is how every play ends. This is how every theater production ends. So for the next 5 to 7 years, I would say, like until I sort of like got old enough to realize like, oh, this doesn't happen. Every time I went to the theater, every time I went to a play, to a musical, to a production, to whatever it was, towards the end, I waited for it. I was waiting for that moment, for that feeling, for that magic. And every time it didn't happen. And I had this sense of disappointment of like, you know, why isn't the ceiling open? And I would look up and I would notice like the ceiling would look the same. Like in my head, I can picture still what the ceiling looked like because this moment was so powerful and such a sensory experience for me. And at every play, I would look up and it wouldn't happen and I would be really disappointed. And that's exactly how your brain works. Your brain is not just reacting to life. We think we are, but we're not. What our brain is doing instead is it is constantly trying to predict. And it takes one experience, especially one that is anchored to emotion, to turn things into a pattern. Now, this is true both of good things, but it's also true of bad things. Because neurologically, your brain is designed to do one thing, that is to find patterns, create expectations, and to keep you safe. Now, this can work in your favor sometimes and sometimes it can't. This is an explanation of it's kind of a neutral thing, like it's neither good nor bad. To me, it was a very magical experience, but it wasn't like impacting me in a major way. It's just an example of how your brain predicts. Because that moment activates dopamine. Now, this can be done in both good moments and not so good moments, but it tells my brain this matters. Remember this, like this activated something in us. So your brain stores it and starts to look for it again and again and again. And that is really beautiful when a pattern is positive. So we have a really positive reaction to something. And this is how you build confidence. This is how you feel safe in familiar environments. And this is how you're going to enjoy things more deeply over time. So that's why it's really important when you're introducing a new habit or you're trying to do something like good in your life, you're trying to introduce something to have like a dopamine reward at the end of it, whether it's grabbing a coffee, grabbing a matcha, grabbing a little sweet treat, calling a friend, something that's going to activate the dopamine after a workout, after you do something that you find hard. Or in this case, for me, this was just something that happened at the end of something. Like there was a clear defining moment at the end of the play, at the end of the production, the gold foils will fall down. And look how long it took me to like unlearn that, to stop expecting that to happen. This is also where it can become limiting because your brain does this even more strongly with negative experiences, because from a survival perspective, avoiding patterns matters more than seeking pleasure. So inversely, if something goes wrong once, so something bad happens, one rejection, one failure, one moment of embarrassment, your brain decides this is how this ends. If I do this, this bad thing will happen. I don't want that to happen. And just like how I sat in that theater waiting for the gold, you start to move through life expecting the same outcome from different experiences because your brain is constantly looking for those patterns. So you hesitate, you pull back, you avoid, not because you're weak, not because you don't know what you want, but because your brain is trying to protect you. It's doing its job. And neurologically, what's happening is your brain has created a prediction based on the past. So when you find yourself in a similar situation, your body reacts before you even think. You're going to feel that anxiety, you're going to feel that resistance, you're going to feel that doubt. And that is not random. That is your brain saying, I've seen this before, let's not do that again. And that's why we can feel those nerves before exams, before doing something new, walking into a room full of people we don't know, going on a date, going to a job interview, whatever it might be. But the truth that people never realize, or most people never realize, is that your brain isn't asking if something's true. It is asking if something is familiar. And if you don't challenge that, you can end up living a whole life shaped by past experiences versus what is actually possible. Because your brain is always generalizing. So one bad moment becomes, this always happens. One experience becomes a belief, and that belief becomes a behavior. But the powerful thing is, as such, through neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to adapt to change, is that what your brain learns, it can relearn. So just like I eventually had to realize, unfortunately, every play I go to, in fact, not a single production I've been to since, and if anyone can tell me of a production where I can go and this will happen, please let me know. But every production I've been to since, gold isn't going to fall from the ceiling. And that doesn't mean the experience becomes less meaningful. It just means I had to let go of that expectation to fully experience what was actually in front of me. And it's the same for you. If you want to change your life, you don't necessarily need a new plan. You just need to give your brain new evidence. You need to go again. You need to try again. That's where that saying, get back on the horse, comes from. And I always say, if something bad happens to a friend of mine in any situation, I'm like, okay, but you need to do it again. You know, a friend of mine had an altercation the other day when she was driving, where somebody like clipped the back of her car. She's absolutely fine. They are absolutely fine. It was just one of those annoying things that happens on narrow streets in London. But I was saying to her, I was like, you need to get back in the car. Like, you need to, because otherwise your brain's going to notice that pattern. It's going to search for it, and it's going to put you off ever getting back in the car, going to put you off ever getting back on the horse. At first, you're going to feel really uncomfortable because it goes against what your brain expects. But that discomfort is not failure. That is rewiring. So in the same way that one experience can shape your expectations, it does not define your reality. It just defines what your brain got used to. And anything your brain learned, you can also teach it differently. So why is this important, and how are we actually going to rewire our brains in real life? Rewiring isn't about thinking differently once, it's about giving your brain repeated new evidence. Your brain only updates when the experience overrides the old pattern. The first thing you're going to want to do is catch the pattern. Awareness first. You cannot change that which you do not notice. So we can't just tell ourselves, I'm going to do differently, I'm going to be different this time. You have to start to pay very close attention to the moments where you pull back, where you avoid, where you overthink, where you assume the outcome. And you want to ask your brain, are we running an old script? What am I expecting to happen right now? This alone is going to start the process of loosening that pattern. Number 2 is to interrupt that thought with a small action. You do not need to do something huge. In fact, your brain rewires much faster when a step feels safe enough and small enough to repeat. So if your pattern is avoiding messaging someone, send the message. If it's overthinking, make the decision quicker. If it's holding back, speak up just once, because small action equals new evidence and new patterns for your brain to notice. Number 3 is to stay long enough for your brain to update. This is where most people go wrong, because they try it once, they feel uncomfortable, and they leave. But your brain needs time to realize this isn't dangerous. So instead of escaping the feeling, I want you to sit in it slightly longer. That is how the nervous system is going to learn safety. Number 4 is to repeat in similar situations. So one experience will not override a pattern, but repetition does. And repetition and consistency will always override the size of something. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Your brain can't differentiate between big and small. It just knows repetition and consistency. Your brain needs to see, this didn't go how I expected it, again and again and again. And that is how you start to weaken those old neurological pathways and strengthen the new ones. Number 5 is to regulate your body while you do it. Rewiring is not just mental, it is also physical. If your body feels overwhelmed, your brain's not going to update the pattern. So while you're doing the new behavior, you're going to want to slow your breathing. You're going to want to relax your body. You're going to want to ground yourself. This tells us this is safe now. This is okay. I'm okay. Number 6 is to stop thinking that discomfort equals something going wrong. And this is the biggest and probably the most important shift, and where 99% of people go wrong. Discomfort does not mean it's not working. It doesn't mean you're not confident. It does not mean that you're doing it wrong. It means that your brain is experiencing something new. And your brain doesn't know the difference between good and bad. It knows repeated. So it's used to doing the other thing. So when your brain experiences something new, it signals as unfamiliar and unsafe. So a simple example would be, if the old pattern is, if I speak up, I get judged, because one time at school or at university or in a meeting, you put up your hand and someone laughed, or someone said, that's really silly, which has happened to me countless times before. So that's our example. First thing we're going to do is speak up anyway. That's the small moment. The second thing we're going to realize is that nothing terrible happens. The third thing we're going to do is repeat. And the fourth thing we're going to do is to stay present instead of shutting down, going through that feeling of like a burning sensation in your chest, like, okay, I'm safe, it's fine, I'm not being chased by a tiger, I am just speaking up in a meeting. And eventually your brain will learn, okay, this is safe, I can do this. This is how I really got over any of that stress or anxiety I had ahead of public speaking. I was always fine when I was up on the stage, but that feeling before, being able to just say to myself, like, we've done this before. We know what the outcome is. It's normal to feel nervous. It's a really normal human experience. It is speaking up in front of people, getting up on a stage is not something we do day to day. So just reminding yourself and staying really present, because rewiring is not about becoming a different person overnight. It is about noticing your patterns, challenging them, and repeating new experience until your brain no longer expects the old outcome. And that really just was a thought that I was having today. I can't even remember like where that thought about the play came to me, but I was like, that's a really interesting example of how our brain notices patterns, of how our brain runs on that prediction system and how this can be applied in everyday life. So let me know if you found that helpful. If you have any other thoughts, queries, things that have come into your mind that you think like, why does that happen in my brain and how can I unlearn that? Comment below. I love to hear everything. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful. I'm trying to grow this YouTube community because I just love it over here. I love watching YouTubes. I love creating them. So let me know what you thought, and I hope to see you again in the next video.